Well, thank you all for making your way back in. My name is Adam Knapp, and I have the honor of being the moderator of the next panel, Envisioning Sustainable Futures, Implementing the Just Imagine 50-Year Resilience Plan. I'm going to do a mic check. Can y'all hear me in the back? Am I carrying all right? Good? Thank you. It is an honor and a privilege to be back in Lake Charles to look out on this beautiful lake that I grew up on. Although I live in Baton Rouge, I come back to Lake Charles as often as I can, or my family will allow me. We love being here for every reason that you all love being here. It's a wonderful city, a great part of the state, and a great part of the country. I think of disasters from an experience that I had working with Paul Rainwater and many others post-Rita and post-Katrina at the Louisiana Recovery Authority, where I got to cut my teeth a bit in this world. I had worked in the Foster administration and in Governor Blanco's administration. And then when the hurricanes hit, did one of those things that all of us do in a moment of disaster. You send an email to somebody and say, how can I help? And the answer was, hey, you can help us set up the disaster management group that led the Katrina and Rita recovery effort, the Louisiana Recovery Authority, and spent about 2.5 years after that in the grind of trying to figure out disaster recovery. Going through the last panel on CDBG-DR, I did have a little PTSD listening to those experiences. It is tough. It can be a grind. I was thinking about the fact that, you know, in a moment like Lake Charles experienced 4 years ago today, the best moments of our people come out in these crises, and we've seen this time and again. But I would say what the mayor said about grit and resiliency, durability, year in, year out to see a plan implemented is tough as well, and just as important, if not more important, to a city and a region recovering. And that's really what we want to have this panel really get into, is to better understand how that has happened and what we see coming ahead from Just Imagine and so much else that has happened. Before I say more, let's just take a moment and thank, too, the city staff and the Civic Center staff for getting up early this morning, the hard work to make today possible, and to get up and make this day special. So just a round of applause for all the support staff of the Civic Center and the Mayor's office for doing a great job getting us ready. I want to just remind you, if you have questions, when we're going to have a Q&A a bit later in the morning, do be prepared to submit those cards, and we will read those out and make sure we ask our panelists what you have on your mind. And we're going to go through, as you see in your binder, the bios of the speakers and the panelists that we have are read out. I will say a little bit about each of them in a moment. But we want to make sure this is interactive, both on the stage and for each of you to have a chance to ask questions. Today, I just want to say a little bit about what I do right now. I'm the head of an organization called the Committee of 100, which sounds a little bit strange and hard to understand as a title. What we are as an organization is CEOs, executives, higher education leaders who come together in a bipartisan fashion, nonpartisan fashion, to try to think about the future of the state in every way possible. We think heavily about that with the world of economic development, workforce, and education issues. But we want to be very involved in the future of Louisiana in every aspect. Our chairman, Wayne Brown, is actually here in front of me. He runs a construction company in Bossier City called Brown Builders. He and a partner, Edward Taylor from Fairfield, actually own and developed a real estate property in Westlake, and we're visiting their property yesterday, have investments all across the state. So Wayne, thank you for being in town from Shreveport and Bossier and investing in Southwest Louisiana and its future. I want to drill into kind of the topic at hand, but first, before we do that, we really want to make sure each of you know the great speakers you have in front of you. To start with, Sarah Judson is the CEO of the Community Foundation of Southwest Louisiana, where she leads initiatives to enhance community well-being and philanthropy by connecting people who care with causes that matter. Under her guidance, the Community Foundation has expanded its impact by fostering strategic partnerships and addressing critical local needs, including the plan we are here focused on called Just Imagine. The second person to introduce, as the mayor spoke to a moment ago, Josh Collin. He's the president of HRI Communities, where he spearheads initiatives to develop and manage residential and mixed-use projects around the state that enhance community living. With a keen focus on sustainable development and community engagement, Colin's work has significantly contributed to shaping vibrant, thriving neighborhoods. His expertise in project management and strategic planning continues to drive HRI's mission of creating exceptional living environments. And finally, Lauren Bynum, who's the Assistant Director of Planning and Development for the City of Lake Charles. Lauren has played a vital role in advancing urban development and community initiatives. She has extensive experience in urban planning, public outreach, and engagement, and traditional neighborhood development. Now, many of you have been familiar with and probably very involved in the process of creating Just Imagine, but I want to just drill into right off the bat more about the plan and how it came together. And so to start with that, I want to start with Sarah Judson and ask the question, really help us get back into the moment. What was the impetus for you and for the community behind Just Imagine?
Well, 4 years ago, actually yesterday, is when we opened our Hurricane Relief and Recovery Fund as people around the world were watching the Weather Channel and other sources and seeing the devastation that was coming our way. And that really was the beginning. And it was amazing and continues to be heartwarming to think about that people ultimately from every state in the country and 10 other countries started making contributions as they saw the devastation coming to help us in Southwest Louisiana. And so we saw at the beginning that there was going to be a need for not only governmental support for recovery, but also philanthropic support. So we knew right off the bat that that really was going to need to be a collaborative approach. And we had dollars came in from all over. And when you think about the beginning part, I mean, one envelope came in the very week after the storm, and it was from the state of New York. And I opened it up. I'm at our partner, the Baton Rouge Area Foundation, sitting in their office. I opened up this envelope, and it has a piece of brown paper wrapped in thirds, and it said Hurricane Laura Relief, and in it were $3 bills. So someone, we don't know their story, but they sent what they could, somehow found us, and that's the kind of thing that stewards our approach. So in the beginning, it was about recovery. And just a couple of weeks later, we were able to be connected. They reached out to us from a local person that grew up in Moss Bluff and went to Sam Houston High School, David Philo and his wife Angela, who normally do their philanthropy in the San Francisco area where they live and raise their family. But they said, we want to help David's hometown, and we want to do it in a really impactful way, and one that can be transformational. It can help with resilience. It can help build a more resilient future for the whole region. And they ultimately granted $2.5 million for our community foundation to steward. And that's how Just Imagine came to be, was the ability to have a master resilience plan that focused on not just a city or a parish, but actually Calcasieu and Cameron as the two parishes most devastated by the storm. And so that's how this process got started really 4 years ago.
Before I leave you, I want to just hear more about, too, the community engagement process. Many of the folks in the room and perhaps watching or listening were a part of that. It was such a great process to engage the community. Talk a little bit about the community engagement process and how that helped the plan unfold.
Well, right off the bat, this was such a team effort, and I personally and some of our small team from our community foundation were located at our partner, the Baton Rouge Area Foundation in Baton Rouge, starting right around the storm for about a month. And so whenever we had the opportunity to know that this significant contribution would be coming for us to steward and really implement in an impactful way for the area, Baton Rouge, their team had already led planning efforts like downtown Baton Rouge and now the Lakes effort, the transformation there in Baton Rouge. And so they were able to give us guidance and say a master plan could really be impactful, and being a third party, the community foundation, that can bring together different governmental entities would be a really successful model. And so from the get-go, we had a team of volunteers that were a steering committee. Some of them are here today. And we had folks representing the city of Lake Charles and Calcasieu Parish and Cameron Parish, interested citizens that brought different expertise and passion to the group. Lauren was a part of that team. And so that team effort is what drove that and got us to selecting a world-class master planning team called Urban Design Associates and a team that included some folks from Louisiana as well that were experts in their field. And one of the reasons that we ultimately chose Urban Design Associates is that they had a strong focus on community engagement so that you could hear from the people about what are your hopes and dreams, what are your concerns, and really what do you want to see for the long term. And that happened over a 10-month period. We had sessions right here, actually, was one of them. And we did it every time in Lake Charles, one time in Cameron Parish, one time in West Calcasieu. So each of our 3 community opportunities, we always had it easily accessible for residents. We had interactive maps where people could plug in places that they had ideas, places that had a concern maybe about drainage. And what was really key in that process is that themes came out. And that's what guided the plan. So it was an understanding part, a testing part, and then that phase of decision making. People said, and you heard it a little earlier, we love the people who live here. We love our natural resources, like we're here on the waterfront. We love our natural and cultural resources. We want more people to have access to them. We want to be able to live here. We want more affordable housing, resilient housing and infrastructure. And so because of the community engagement, that's what informed the plan and ultimately includes 11 what we call catalytic projects, so that it's not just a standalone project, but it's something that then will catalyze and increase other positive impact in the area. So that community engagement continues to drive the plan today.
What the mayor said earlier was that it was to be a plan that was action-oriented, very specific on implementation. So Josh, I want to kind of go to you. Some companies may have been hesitant after seeing a community so devastated by so many events, as the mayor narrated. But you did. HRI was very interested, and I think about the projects that y'all have brought forward around downtown, around housing, two topics front and center, and just imagine. So what got you interested in Lake Charles? What got HRI committed to being here and investing?
Yeah, well, thanks, Adam. We're a New Orleans-based national company, and so we've seen our share of devastation. And I joined HRI about 7-8 months after Katrina, and being part of that recovery effort that was very much resourced in a way that could build affordable, mixed income, market rate housing, all in a way that was more resilient and impactful in neighborhoods, was something we experienced firsthand and got to be very close with the state and deploying CDBG disaster recovery dollars towards housing recovery. And so we've been big in Houma, Shreveport, Lafayette, other places using these recovery funds. And we knew that we could be a material part of the solution in Lake Charles. Wanted to do that, wanted to give back in that way. And frankly, reached out to one of the prior panelists, Paul Rainwater, who we've known since those efforts in Katrina, knowing he was a DeQuincy native and had worked for the city and the parish in previous lives. He was gracious enough to take us on a really extensive tour. And we came away saying, okay, look, we're a company that really likes downtowns, big and small main streets to downtown Dallas, whatever. We want to be part of downtown. Downtown certainly has more potential than it's been unlocked even before the storms. And if we could do a really amazing housing community there, I think we'd really be able to make the biggest impact. So that's what drove that initial decision. And then the state put out some great funding rounds, and we rolled up our sleeves, and I think we really found the right site, which is at the corner of Division, Hodges, Mill, and Bilbo.
And talk a little bit about the Wood Ring project. We got a chance to catch up a moment ago. Y'all are getting pretty close.
We are. So Wood Ring is 110 apartments in 2 phases. It is mixed income with housing for everybody, literally market rate, moderate income, workforce, and a little bit of affordable housing, particularly for folks with permanent supportive housing needs. And so we landed on this site because we could do a combination of different housing styles, townhouses, multifamily buildings, and our first 12 units in a townhouse are going to be delivered next week, with our 4-story multifamily building in early October, and the whole thing complete by the end of the year. So we're so excited to bring these housing options to downtown, and I think with the amenities that we have and our absolute kind of community feeling neighborhood, it's going to be ideal for folks that live and work in the downtown to make use of this, and we'll be uplifting that whole immediate area.
That's so exciting, and I want to come back and talk more about that. Lauren, you have been integrally involved in this throughout the entire process, and your background and experience in urban planning and landscape design really lend to having the kind of leadership that was spoken about on the last panel to be able to implement, not just at the top, but at the city staff. Talk about some of the steps that Lake Charles has taken to ensure more sustainability. We've heard about it in this development, but talk through before and after the storm what you see happening in sustainability in Lake Charles.
Yeah, so before the storm, of course, our office, my office, planning and development, we started analyzing, it's our job to analyze development patterns and to see what is, the best option for development, both commercial, residential, and to evaluate our zoning. So we started a citywide rezoning effort before the storms that would help kind of inform as people came in where we wanted the commercial development and where we wanted to kind of protect the residential development. And that's something we started before the storms. The storms kind of put a pause on it, but we were able to reevaluate after the storm. So that was one. Another thing that the city started in 2017 was a citywide drainage improvement project. After the storms, we accelerated that project, and so it's the most aggressive drainage improvement plan, and really looking at how can we make ourselves more resilient. And so that's just one example. We had we're rebuilding. We had our automated water meters that we looked at. I know we'll talk a lot about the storms, but we had several, as you all know. We had open buildings where we had a freeze, and we had a lot of buildings that were still just destroyed from the storms. And so the only way to really detect those water leaks is we had to send our staff out there. And as I talked about before, city capacity is also an issue. We don't have the staff to send out there all the time to just walk the streets and look for those issues. So we've implemented an automated meter project so that in future storms and future events, we can be much more reactive and resilient to those things, and we can find them quicker. Rebuilding, we had our public works campus that was largely destroyed, and so right now we are working on rebuilding a campus that's much more organize our divisions in such a way that we can react to storms in a much more just organized and immediate way. And so those are a few things, and then even supporting projects like Josh's that have those fortified standards. And I think we looked at it, and I don't know the exact percentage, but a large percentage of our multifamily projects and larger development projects after the storm have been rebuilt with those fortified standards. So all of that goes together and really make sure that we're doing what we can. I mean, even on a microscopic level of just looking at the zoning, something simple as that, all the way to bigger projects and drainage improvement projects that we're still going to continue to make sure that we are in the best situation we can be if we get hit by another storm.
Adam, if I could piggyback on Lauren a little bit, part of the reason we chose that Wood Ring location and part of the reason we were able to get Wood Ring going so quickly was because the city had paved the way with a lot of planning for a development like ours. Our block had a zoning overlay, so we came in and designed a development to a block that was looking for something like us. We built totally within our entitlements without having to go for any zoning waivers or any difficult processes. Worked with the historic district we were in and the business improvement district, all which were kind of layers, but all made sense for our type of project. That really helped us. And then given the city's focus on resiliency and our focus on resilient funding with those requirements, it lined up perfectly. The amount of stormwater management we're doing on site to keep that initial rainfall on our site and slowly put it into the municipal system was perfect for what they were trying to achieve and what the state was trying to achieve. So I think the city having some foresight and some early planning to say, hey, we want to create the right environment for development, not only attracted us, but made it a really good process. I mean, we work around the country in some city processes to get through permitting and get through all the different committees you need to meet with. The city paved the way, including helping organize meetings with every council person, neighborhood districts. The city definitely created a good ecosystem to develop in.
That's great. You know, I think, Sarah, and this may be a question for all of you, something that was said on the last panel that, you know, a lot of us hate planning because we think it's just a thought exercise and not something that's real and tangible. And after a crisis, so much of what we want is action and let's get moving and do things. But Sarah, talk about how do we all, how does the city, how does every citizen here ensure that Just Imagine doesn't become a plan that sits on a shelf, that it's actionable in the future as much as in the past?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's probably one of the things that all of us are so excited about is that it is moving forward. There are numerous examples of parts of the plan that are already, as the mayor said, implementable and actually happening. And part of that is because so many people are involved. One of the things we did after those 11 projects were identified and started to take shape is that we asked different community members to be champions of those projects. And we have different people that have volunteered, and that's still happening. So I put that out there. If you see ones that you think you would like to be a part of in some form or fashion, then we want to hear from you and be able to plug you in to help move them forward. And that's part of how this is really happening. And one of those examples is the city and the housing authority receiving the HUD Choice Neighborhood Grant. And you heard earlier, that's a $40 million investment from the federal government via HUD. And it's an incredible opportunity for any community, but especially in our situation. And that was one of those things that was a direct response to the plan when people said we want affordable housing and we want housing and other infrastructure in a resilient manner. And so the team we called it in the project, the Mid-City Transformation, working with the Housing Authority, had identified a property called Lloyd Oaks that had not yet been repaired, the center of the city on Lake Street at 18th, and that would be the one that would be ideal for a new mixed income neighborhood as part of a choice initiative. And so having a team like Jim Rock and Randy Roach, our former mayor, they were the champions for this project. People, Visit Lake Charles had somebody on the team. Our chamber had somebody on the team. It was a cross-functional group of committed citizens working with the city, the parish, the housing authority to put that together. And my appreciation is that what's usually happens in about a year, ours happened in 4 months and 6 out of the whole country. Lake Charles was one of those. And so I think that's really the example of things do not sit on a shelf when a lot of people have given the input to create the plan. You're working with the appropriate partners, and everybody starts to be in sync and moving it forward. And HRI is a part of that because they're the developer for the Choice Neighborhood.
So we've done another Choice Neighborhood, one of the first in the country in New Orleans, and then a Hope 6 before that, which is a very similar type of undertaking in New Orleans. And you know, getting involved in a public housing redevelopment is something we don't do without really analyzing the opportunity and making sure that we can make a difference. And when we were made aware that Lake Charles was pursuing a CNI grant and was looking for a lead developer, we wanted to make sure that all these ingredients were in place. The first was that the city is on board as a team. And I have never seen anybody as together as this community was around this project. And I think it is a lot of the work that Just Imagine did between the city, the parish, the housing authority, the residents, you know, the foundations, obviously, you know, the whole business coalition, everyone was on the same page with the vision for this project, which is so hard to do and so rare. And obviously with the storms and the recovery, there was a lot to galvanize it, but I've never seen to this extent. The people component of a choice neighborhood is the most important component. That's funding for community and supportive services and kind of trying to break the generation poverty cycle. And they had urban strategies involved as their people implementer, who we worked with in New Orleans, and would not undertake a project like this without urban strategies. So that was huge. Having a good plan about how to revitalize a neighborhood, new urbanists, traditional blocks, you know, really a lot of safety aspects, make it a really good feeling neighborhood is key. Urban Design Associates that Sarah mentioned was already on board. We looked at that plan, only had tweaks. So that was really huge, particularly when you only have 4 months to prepare a massive grant application. And really what it came down to is something that if you invested, you could completely transform a neighborhood, and that you weren't just doing something that would be, you know, changing the way it looks but not making a difference. And I think the Lake Charles Mid-City CNI is going to be truly transformational for the center of town. So we've hit the ground running, have a lot of good things to report, but yeah.
And I just want to, as a planner, I'd be remiss if I didn't comment to the, you know, the plans that sit on a shelf. And I think that, you know, this is the analogy that I use often. I think a lot of us are guilty of, you know, buying a tool or a thing that we have the best intentions of using. And, you know, and for whatever reason, we can't use it or whatever happens. And, you know, like personally, it's not, you know, we blame the plan. Well, it's not my Instant Pot's fault that it doesn't get used. It's my fault, you know. And so I think that the challenge and the mindset shift is that, you know, the people that implement the plan are the people that are in this room, whether you're in this community or your own community. Those are the people that then take that plan. We all came together and we agreed on something. And so I think that that's got to be that different mindset shift. And instead of blaming the plan sometimes where, for whatever reason, and on that note, all plans aren't created equally. And so, you know, it's so vitally important that you get a consultant and you get a world-class, you know, design team that can really, really detailed go through that implementation plan, really focus on that community engagement, because at the end of the day, those are the things that make the plan successful. And so, you know, I know as a, you know, a planner that works for the city and we have consultants that come in, it's my job and it's our administration's job to make sure that we hold them to that and we make sure we get those things, because you're right, that's part of the success. That is the success, is the just community buy-in across the board that we've never seen, bringing different agencies together, and then having a really detailed implementation process that makes it so easy for us as staff, as, you know, people in the community to pick up and then just move forward. And so I think that would be my my challenge, is to just kind of reframe how we think about those things and say, like, why am I not, you know, taking this piece of the plan or this other plan? And the plans aren't bad. You know, it's we have to take some initiative, and I think that's and hold, you know, everyone accountable for those plans.
Well, while we're on you, Lauren, I wanted to come to another question about Just Imagine, which is the city's part it plays in really implementing some of the catalytic projects. So we'd love to hear just how has the city, how have we all achieved some of the wins that are described in it, and talk a little bit, if you wouldn't mind, connecting it to LC Rebound as well.
So we, the city, again, you have this plan that has become a roadmap for us. We have incredible buy-in, so our elected officials, who are really a megaphone for their constituents, they can see what their constituents said. They can see what their people wanted. And so we were able to kind of, we went at the end of last year, got LC Rebound, which is a tax restructuring bond, approved. And so I think throughout there's, the mayor will kill me that I don't know how many projects exactly are in there, but I do know that we hit on We addressed 8 out of the 11 catalytic projects. And so that, to me, what that says is the city of Lake Charles is absolutely a partner with the Community Foundation and everyone else involved to make sure that we see some of these things come to fruition. Some of those projects, I mean, we have the Nellie Letcher Park that was just opened earlier this year. We've had, we've in the part of the LC Rebound, we had youth centers that would be that could double as community resilient hubs. We had street revitalization projects to support Mid-City. Even our commitment with Josh's project in Mid-City in that Choice neighborhood, those infrastructure investments. And so I think what it does is it, like I said, provides a roadmap of where we can really get involved and where we can utilize our resources and our efforts to make sure we're supporting a larger vision. And again, it makes it so much easier knowing that the community is on board. That takes one step and one fear out of it. We know that what we're doing is going to be supported. And then again, we work with consultants that go get us grants. And so we have a plan and a roadmap for them to then go and implement. So, I mean, I think all of that is so important. And we're still working on implementing that LC Rebound, but there's going to be a lot that comes out of that. That supports Just Imagine.
And one of those that just came to be just a couple of weeks ago is a new kayak launch at Riverside Park, which is in North Lake Charles on Fitzenrider Road, and a wonderful example of native plants, being back to nature, enhancing your ability to access the water. And so when we go back to the Just Imagine plan, people said, we love our natural and cultural resources. We want more people to be able to access them and enjoy them. And so coming together and creating this new kayak launch and bringing more people, we were able to partner thanks to FEMA, who connected us with the National Park Service in the fall of 2020. And they got really interested in us helping us achieve one of those projects called Bayou Greenbelt, which is connecting the waterways around the city. And they said, this Riverside Park is a tremendous example that you're already doing well, and it could just be even better. And so just a few weeks ago, we have the National Park Service in town. They give recommendations of how we as a community can better implement the Bayou Greenbelt. And now more people already are utilizing Riverside Park. I mean, it's really amazing and exciting to see that the more we work together and implement the plan, people appreciate it and are taking advantage of it.
It's a part of what I saw in Just Imagine and prepping for today was that so many aspects of Lake Charles and quality of life in Southwest Louisiana get hit on. Part of it is also talking about the economy and workforce. And for graduates coming out of Sewella, graduates coming out of McNeese, to see what the plan talks about in its vision statement about enviable quality of life. This is what really is a magnet for talent to stay and retain in that community and build families and set down roots, which has been enviable forever with what we see out here with the natural environment. But it's great to hear more of those getting implemented. Josh, I would love to just kind of come back to the question of, can you pinpoint some of the things that the city did to make it easier to choose some of the locations here? You talked about some of those moves, but you've seen this in other cities as well. Talk a little bit about some of the process it took to make the moves forward on both of those projects you've been highlighting.
Well, again, on Woodring, I think it had to do a lot with the system already created for working downtown. And Lori Marinovich was the planner we worked with on that, and she knew that process, and we had that person inside the city to be our facilitator and our overall spiritual guide for a very complicated journey. And Lauren's doing just that for us on the Choice neighborhood mid-city work. So that's very important. But again, I think if you have leadership, both on the mayor level, the city council level, the parish has been beyond supportive. Somebody that really believes and has a vision for their downtown and where they want to take it, you can really design something and implement something that is true to that vision. And then those are your talking points, right? And I think we've been able to do it with resiliency. not only the stormwater management I talked about, but we're building everything to fortified multifamily gold standards, which is all about building a robust structure that can withstand a storm and allow people to immediately get back to their normal lives after the storm. An example of that would be having refrigerators on generators. Wouldn't that be nice? Right? So that's actually something that's going to be at Woodring. And then to Enterprise Green Communities, which is a sustainability program for apartments, not unlike LEED, but a lot more practical for apartment developers to implement. So I think those were the kind of things where the city and HRI really saw eye to eye.
Now, Lauren, I'm gonna go off script a little bit here, and you were talking earlier about the gold standard, to that point about some of those examples. Can you go a little bit deeper into what was spoken about earlier about how important that has been in the plan itself and in the implementation and the vision kind of for the city?
Say the gold standards, you're talking about the fortified?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so again, it's so important to us to, as a city, when we get involved with projects or we incentivize or we just support in whatever way that, for us, I think everyone in this room knows that the biggest the biggest concern we had after the storm was housing. You heard the mayor say it's changed now because we have some great projects coming up, but housing was the biggest concern. And part of that was the resiliency of that housing. And so it was very important to us to support and to work with developers that had, I know that there's different funding and grants, but what Josh didn't say is that adds 20 to 30% to a project. And when you're looking at a multi-million-dollar project, that's not nothing. And so, it's that Josh and his team and his ability to there was no question about, some of even the sustainable features that y'all have on site and the landscaping. Those are things that, with other projects could have been easily value engineered out. But that was their commitment. And so those quality developments are something that we absolutely have to support and continue to advocate for. And so I think for us, and I've heard, we've talked, a lot, I don't know what the percentage is because we haven't crunched the numbers, but a good percentage of our larger development projects, housing development projects since the storm have been built with those fortified standards. And so, as a city, as an administration, it makes you feel a little bit better after surviving what we survived and not, housing was such a critical issue. And so there is a good peace of mind, and that helps even to the industry and to, our commercial sustainability with our businesses, in our hospitals. After the storm, if you couldn't house a nurse, then they couldn't help in a situation that really needed help. So that issue trickled down, and we saw it, with so many different levels. So it's incredibly important for the city.
And to go off that, one of the other projects specifically focused on housing ultimately created a resilient housing toolkit, is what that was called. And that was tremendous research by the team from Urban Design Associates with FEMA, and basically taking a really large notebook of recommendations and honing in on what's really important, that a person like me could talk to my roofer and say, here's what I want, and here's what it means to be a fortified gold roof. So I know we have some builders and commercial contractors in the room today, and we really hope that that's something that will catch on and that more people will be able to be aware of it and bring these things forward. One of the partnerships that has come about in the last few years is with La House, based at LSU, and they're all about bringing those most current, cutting-edge, resilient features to people across the state. And so that's a partnership that we now have through the Just Imagine plan, so that more people in our area can know what those are and work with the city, work with your builders to build in a more resilient way.
That's great. A plan named Just Imagine is so much about hope, and the idea of being inspired for the future of community to bring us together. But hope is not a plan. Hope is necessary to inspire us, but the plan is about action. I'd love to hear some of the things that you see in the coming few years, and we've talked about a number of them, that are described in the plan, that are in LC Rebound, that y'all are most excited about, that residents can look forward to as they become implemented. And go in any order in particular. Maybe I'll look over at Josh and talk a little bit about those
I mean,
projects that come together.
My mind obviously goes to the Mid-City Choice neighborhood, right? And from where that one is, we have a first phase that's, call it off-site and adjacent because it's at 18th and Lake, not technically on the Housing Authority, Lloyd Oaks property, but it kind of completes that block. And we're going to be closing on the financing and beginning construction in September for 46 mixed-income apartments on that block, all in the same resiliency standards, and that will have replacement housing options for Lloyd Oaks residents. So we're off to the races there. And then, you know, one key thing everyone wants to see is the completion of relocation, which was done last week.
Yay.
Yes.
That's a big deal.
And the launch of demolition, right? To see actual physical change on Lloyd Oaks. And we're teed up for starting demolition in late October. So those kind of really great steps are happening. As far as the financing for on-site, we worked really closely with the state leading up to a key funding round called Prime 3 of CDBG disaster recovery funds. One senior housing phase on-site got funded, which is so important to replace the Pizza Huts, the little houses, as everyone's commonly referred to them, with new senior cottages, right? And the largest on-site phase of 106 apartments just missed the cutoff, but is #1 on the wait list. So we're really hoping that we get some funding for that one very quickly. So as soon as demolition's complete, bam, we can start some on-site housing there in this mixed income fashion, market rate, workforce, and providing those replacement units for former residents. So it's 560 units combined on that site with brand new infrastructure, a new city park. It's going to be very, very cool.
That's really great. Sarah?
In the development of the 11 projects, the volunteer steering committee decided we didn't want to prioritize them because they are all so important in their own way, except for one thing had to be #1, and that was coastal protection. And I think for us as a region, it's something that we're already seeing progress on, and that the fact that Calcasieu Parish Administration works with Cameron Parish Administration, and together they are focused on adding the rocks. We have all, many of us have been a part of it. Rocket. That works. That shoreline protection is working. And so to know that we are truly working in a regional way to protect the coast so that we're all safer for future natural disasters is really important and makes all the other things possible, because if we don't do that one, then everything else is for naught. So I think that's one that we're really optimistic about the future, and the fact that we go with a united voice to talk to the folks at the state, at CPRA and other organizations, is really making an impact when they see that we're coming as a united front and we're all see what works and are able to go and advocate for the same thing. And we have the plan that demonstrates why that's important.
One project that I think I'm incredibly excited about is just to watch. There were some things happening, of course, before the storm, but then the creation of the plan, it's provided so much vision that I think people can get really excited about, but is to watch our waterfront transform.
Right there.
And yeah, you can see like how different things are. And, I remember before the hurricanes hit, I would watch, there was a barge that was building that, boardwalk and putting those pylons in. And I would drive out there, once a week and just sit and watch. And it was just so exciting to watch that level of progress. And then of course, and I don't think that anyone really takes, you take a moment and think the fact that we had, COVID and all those other disasters that we talked about, and we still are seeing vertical things happen. But even more than that, to work with, just imagine and, just to come up with, we're planning for using that plan and planning, we could transform this area, and really we're right on I-10. There's so much opportunity. A lot of the things in LC Rebound, a lot of the things happening in downtown, there's just a lot of excitement and energy And so it's a very exciting time to be a planner and to be in Lake Charles. And I also think when you have private investment, when you have someone come in and do projects on a level like, the CNI project or Woodring, it gives us as a city the ability to look at what we can help, if it's planning for future, streetscaping projects to support that. If it's, I think that that's one thing I appreciate about our office and the administration is we're constantly thinking, if this person is investing this, how can we support it? And so I think that that's the name of the game sometimes is what can we add to a project? What can we add to your investment to help it go even further? And for Woodring, we looked at some street additions and some street upgrades. And so those are the things that are easy for us to really to achieve and to put into practice. So, but for me, I can't wait to to be 5-10 years from now and walk on our lakefront and it look completely different. So.
If I could pick one, and I'm so excited for this. In Baton Rouge, we have a lot of never in my lifetime, folks. Never in my lifetime would I hope and expect to see the bridge financing get done and signed off on. I think that is something that I'm super excited as a part of this story. It's long overdue to get done, but it's exciting to see project financing put in place, signed off by the state. Presidents have stood here and called for this to be done. And to see that now being put into motion across the gubernatorial transition, all those things, that is very tough to get done and important for the future of the community. I'm going to do a reminder before I ask my last question. If you have questions for our panelists, write those down, start to pass those forward. I'll read a few of your questions in just a moment. The last panel, we had heard the question, what lessons have you learned along the way? And you heard about, my goodness, wouldn't it be great if CDBG was predictable after a natural disaster and came faster to communities in need and in times of crisis, that wasn't as clumsy as it was for Lake Charles's recovery. What would you say, each of you, are some of the lessons learned for each of you that you would impart to other cities, other communities that you'd share that in the last 4 years really have been either hard lessons or exciting lessons that you're going to hold on to for your lifetime and you'd share with others. So in any particular order, or I'll call out. Sarah?
Sure, I'll jump in. I think for me, partnerships and building those relationships. So the more that, as they referred to in the earlier panel, of doing things on sunny days, so that when you have those challenging situations, you already know those other folks. You know who you can call. You have them in your phone. They will answer your text or your phone call. I think that is really key, and not only just in your own area, but really around the state and hopefully at some other places as well, because that's really how we have made so much progress, is through teamwork. And through seeing that we don't work in a silo, that we can only be successful if we work together as a team. And so I think us having those relationships and continuing to make them happen. I mean, Just Imagine is a great example of that, as Christy with Thrive and Healthy Image walks through. They print an article every month about a Just Imagine project or one of those themes. So those kind of relationships, Visit Lake Charles does the marketing for the plan. You can all see that on the website. I think those kind of things, having those relationships that you can have in good times, and then they really come into play and you get a lot of more traction quickly in a challenging time.
I'll go next. I think that exactly the partnerships, I think that makes it, one thing I've seen is it's so much easier for us to do our job whenever, y'all went out, got all of that buy-in. It's very detailed. It makes it so easy for us to then, grab the torch and run in whatever direction we need to run in. The other thing is just the importance of taking a plan like that and breaking it down into levels where we can have shovel-ready projects, grant funding, even just, it's like they say government, it's you speed up to slow down, or or something. It's to have those things ready and to have them well thought out, to work with consultants to have things so when there are grant funding, we can plug things in. I think that's something where, putting that time, like on sunny days, putting that time preparing for what could be. And I think just working together as a team, I mean, I haven't seen that in a whole lot of other communities that I've worked in, where you have all these organizations that come together. We often are in rooms just talking through ideas and what could be, and sometimes the ideas are great, and sometimes they're not, and sometimes we just we have a great relationship where it's easy to say, this is what we're trying to do, what are you, this aligns with what you're trying to do, let's work together. And I think that that's been a really, really beautiful, beautiful thing.
I guess, Adam, at the risk of not totally answering the question, I'll give you two things I wish were different, wish that were changed. One is the HUD Choice Neighborhood Grant. We celebrate a $40 million grant, but it comes with multiple hundreds of millions of dollars of scope, right? So having done one and starting to do the second one, it would be good if there were other federal funds that were directly going to come with that CNI grant, whether it's the HUD disaster recovery funding that is plentiful in the state, or new market tax credits or other programs, Department of Transportation dollars, those kind of things that were there to help you, now that you have a CNI grant, help you actually implement it. The second is, this is just complaining because that's what I do when I speak, as other developers do. We're spending all of this money creating these fortified structures. We're building in a smart way. And the program that we're implementing, this fortified program, was designed by the insurance industry's think tank. So these are what they want, the insurers. We're doing what they think is the best thing we can do. And what do we get for that? The same insurance bill as anybody else that didn't spend these extra tens of millions of dollars. And really that needs to change because they're having their cake and eating it too. They're having their risk addressed by us spending scarce resources on it and then not giving us any break for it to help pay for it, right? So I think that's something really big that needs to change. So.
Well said. Boy, that was also very specific. I like that. I'm going to go through, these are some fabulous questions, guys. Thank you for submitting so many. This is a question, Josh, we'll go right back to you. Would your organization consider, this is a very tough place to start, would your organization consider a high-quality, mixed-income, affordable housing community north of I-10?
Absolutely. I think, when you go to make mixed income work, right, you need a couple things. You need a good, development of high quality that's going to be able to compete with true market rate. You need good management, and you need social services for the folks that are receiving subsidy, again, to help break that generational poverty cycle. You do need a good location, right? And I think other things might have to happen in and around that area to make it competitive with the downtown. But I mean, look how close they are. So I think it needs to be part of a bigger kind of plan, but there's no reason why you can't take health that's happening just south of I-10 and bring it north of I-10.
The next question is for everyone, and this is a question about housing. Are all or a few of the housing developments ADA compatible, inclusive of mobility, visual, auditory, and also are the parks inside the projects, are they ADA compatible? Thinking about resiliency, sustainability, and healthy housing neighborhoods. So for the whole panel to tackle, kind of talk about some of the projects and how they handle ADA compliance.
I guess I can jump in with both Woodring and the Mid-City neighborhood are designed to be fully ADA accessible, fair housing compliant, all of the UFAS, you name the acronym, right? And a lot of it has to do with the challenge of here you are raising buildings, 3 feet above base flood elevation, a foot above the crown of the adjacent street, all of that stuff. How are you getting accessibility? And a lot of what we've done is to create it a center of a block that is a little bit more raised. So we're hiding our parking in the center of a block, if you think about it, and letting the buildings kind of create that traditional street wall with porches and those kind of things. So there might be steps to get in from the street, but the parking lot side of the building is very much on the same plane as the parking, as the landscaping, so you can have ADA accessible ground floor units. You have an amazing civil engineer in this town. D.W. Jessen is fantastic, and they've been able to work with us on both those projects to create that solution. And that minimizes giant ramps on the front of the buildings and kind of those ugly things, yeah.
And from a, our office handles permitting, building permits and things like that. And so I think that to the extent that building codes speak to that, but what we're doing on the city side, I know for city projects, is that is something, a filter that we, of course, put all of our projects through. In fact, one of the LCE rebound projects is a fully accessible playground, which we are all really excited about, and something that I think is, best practices in other communities. And so that is a commitment that the city and our community services director has made. And so I think that's going to be a really important asset and focus on that accessibility to all and children.
Mm-hmm. The next question, Sarah, did you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I would just, one other thing I mentioned earlier, La House, and that's something that they also focus on. And so having that partnership with them helps us then work with builders to help ensure that those different things are addressed.
Well, while I have you, Sarah, the next question is for you. What are the plans for restoring the tree canopy? So many of us, were so surprised the first time we came back to see just how different it looked. And mostly it was just the tree and our experience with the green cover of a community. So how is that in the plan? What do you see happening around the tree canopy?
Well, part of Just Imagine, but led by the city at that point, was actually a survey. We received a grant for an organization that's what they do, and they actually assess the tree canopy within the city. So there are stats on the percentage of loss that we had in tree canopy. And so the city then put in place something called Retree LC, and that has been underway and will continue to be. And I will say it's one of those things where you really learn when you have different situations, the kind of connection that people make. People give us a call, give us an email at the Community Foundation, and tell us things they're really interested in or concerned about or ways they want to help. And trees is one of those things that a lot of people care about. So it's definitely there. There is a plan, and that's something that people could be involved with if they would like to do that.
That's very helpful. Anyone else on tree canopy before I go to the next question?
I guess tree preservation's been part of everything we've undertaken in Lake Charles, identifying the large, mature, healthy trees, designing a plan around them. That's both at Woodring and on the Mid-City. And then obviously there's a whole lot of planting requirements to meet, a sustainable community that we're doing as far as new trees.
Yeah, and in Just Imagine, and Lauren really knows a lot more about this, but when you talk about streetscape, sometimes it's traffic calming where you don't need as many lanes. The traffic doesn't warrant that, and it allows it to be more walkable and bikeable. And a lot of that also incorporates street trees. And I learned from Lauren and others lately what a street tree is, what makes one really more of a canopy than others. And so there really is a lot of information out there, and that is in the plan, so that as these projects come to fruition, streetscaping is a really critical part and will increase the tree canopy.
Yeah, and the streetscaping is so important, and that falls within, our right-of-way. Of course, we have the Retree project, where, there's different trees for different purposes, right? There's reforesting, there's street trees, street canopy. It is hot here. And so, a lot of that is part of placemaking even, street calming. I mean, you can use it in so many ways. So one thing that we are working on internally is just to come up with strategies that we can balance the needs of our infrastructure with the needs for trees and street canopies and things like that. It's a challenge. We're pretty flat and we're pretty, low. And so that's something that we are constantly trying to work through. We're looking at other cities and best practices, but for us it's so important because we did lose a good bit. We had somebody come in our office after the storm and say, they lived in the downtown area and they're like, I can hear the interstate traffic, and I never could hear that before. And it's because we lost that. And so I think it's such an important thing. And so I am very happy that people are concerned about that. And it's something that we need to really make a priority.
The next question is for everyone, and I think this is a great one to go into a topic we haven't really gotten into yet. The Lloyd Oaks Mid-City Project will change the area around it for the better and create a new identity for the neighborhood, which has a strong black population. During this project and others, how do we ensure that the minority businesses are not pushed out as property values increase, new businesses come in, and the revitalized area become more expensive to work in? So Lauren or Josh, you want to talk about y'all's experiences?
I could take a couple initiatives we have, one with urban strategies, and then one that we're undertaking is our third phase of the development that we are gearing up to apply for the state in the next round of funding is right on Lake Street, and it is a mixed-use phase where we're going to have kind of 4,000 to 6,000 square feet of ground floor retail, rather than going after the national, chains with large balance sheets. We're actually designing it to cater to small minority businesses and maybe even Section 3 businesses, which are businesses owned by a resident of the housing authority. We think that will be a good way to not only do a neighborhood level amenity, whether it's a hairdresser or a yoga studio or a small coffee shop, but do it in a way that really retains and promotes small startup local businesses. The second is Urban Strategies is doing a ton of work in the broader neighborhood about economic development and equity, and they're establishing something called an equity hub, which is basically like a business incubator space. And they're looking to do that in a off-site location first, and then eventually moving it onto the revitalized mid-city site facing the city's public park.
I'll just speak to it from just the excitement of being able to watch that process happen. We took a trip to Cincinnati to get our wonderful award. That was very exciting. But one of the we got to do a tour, and one of those tours was a project that was the predecessor grant of the CNI. And so it was obvious where it was great because it was like the test. We could see what was working and what wasn't working. And some of those commercial spaces were not working. And so we got to talk about it amongst ourselves, and it's exciting to see this grant and the wraparound services to make sure that those things are not falling through the cracks. So it's nice when you see, and that was not something I didn't have knowledge of before, so it's been really fun to be a part of this project and really watch all of those details as far as even the Urban Strategies team having to locate those that are dislocated, that were relocated from the storm, and then find them and see what their situation was, that they wanted to come back. I mean, all of those details have been really well worked out in ways I hadn't thought about, and I'm glad somebody had. So I would just say that's a cool thing that a lot of those details are being thought about with that CNI project.
To your point, it is about intentionality and leadership in the mayor's office as well, and y'all have been thoughtful about that with this project. And it's one of those things that we've seen in other parts of the state. It has to be something that stays top of mind, not just during the project construction, but after delivery. The next question is about that fortified gold standard again. The question is, fortified is not code. It took the state 9 years to adopt, one above freeboard. How can we improve outcomes for all residents? Opponents say it costs too much to build better. And how would you answer that question and that challenge of cost to sustainability?
Yeah, I think you have to look at each element of fortified. There are some that are very low cost. For instance, if you were re-roofing your house, to go to a fortified roof really isn't that much more of a premium. You're really talking about taping joints and plywood so that when the shingles fail, because shingles fail, that you have that temporary barrier until you get another roofer out there. Would be an example of something so entry level and that could be made part of a code or encouraged or incentivized by the insurers, right? And then there's other things that are, creating a continuous load path from your roof down into your structure to really anchor that. And, there's ways of doing that aren't super costly, and maybe fortified gold goes, into a different level of expense, but some basic framing techniques that, from what we know now, we'd implement on a project, whether it requires fortified or not, for, 2% more, you're going to get a better building. So I think you probably don't necessarily need to go all the way with a formal certification program where you're getting all of these consultants to come out and document and drive costs, or just having really good specifications, right? So there's a balance.
And that resilient housing toolkit that I mentioned earlier is on the Just Imagine website. There's a link to that, so you can see some of that basic information.
So, Lauren, anything else on that?
Yeah, I mean, I just think that, the question, and I think we're seeing this across the board, which is why we're here, right? It's no longer a matter of when a community, or if a community is going to get hit by a storm, but it's when. And for us, it was, when will it stop? So, I think we've done our time, and so we hope we have a respite for a while. But I think that it's a part of, every structure within the city limits of Lake Charles had some damage. And so when you look at, you're investing in your home and in your property, and so, to Josh's point, like, some of those investments don't have to be a lot, and some of them can be a lot. And I do think there's a broader conversation to be had with the insurance comment. I think that is something that has to be solved. And I think that, hopefully we'll get there. But again, we're seeing these things happen more frequently. And it's that level of investment. We have insurance and that's costly, but we have to have it because we're going to have storms. But again, I think it's across the board what we've heard from other communities is it's not if, it's when. So I just think that that's part of it. And the resiliency toolkit does break it down into a way where even, a person who's not familiar can implement some of those things on their house.
Adam, one more point. When we're talking about resilient housing, just want to be clear that building safer buildings is not a substitution for evacuation. And I think this really gets confusing, right? If you give every building has a generator and everything's robust, folks might psychologically want to stay, right? Or think they can stay. But if you got a category, 3, 4, or 5 coming, this is not meant to substitute real evacuation. It just means that folks will have somewhere to come back home to, right?
It's a great point I made to my parents. We had this conversation about a generator at their house not too long ago. Still worth getting out when you need to. Josh, another question for you, going back to ADA for a moment. Have the plans for new housing projects considered the real needs of ADA accessibility by using wheelchair users to test those real-life experiences of access into and within your housing units?
Yeah, I think there's a real-world practitioners, right, where we own and operate close to 6,000 apartments. So we've seen a lot of what we've built be used, but there's also a lot of design guidelines about making sure that your bathrooms and your kitchens in particular work well. And you'll find that, you look at going to a one-bedroom unit that was built, 20 years ago and a one-bedroom built now. The one-bedrooms built now, those kitchens and baths are a lot bigger than they used to be, and it's just such a different percentage of the size. But it really comes down to practice and, having that experience.
This may be our last question. I just got a note for time. Sarah, this is a question about, going back to Just Imagine for a moment, have you seen donors and philanthropists engage in new or more meaningful ways when there is a tangible vision like Just Imagine? And do you think that people give differently when strong partnerships lead the way?
I definitely think that the gift from the Philos has started that process where people can see, whether it's a person, a family, a company, a nonprofit organization, where they see there's a plan and you're implementing it, the things that we, the people, said we want to happen, and they are happening. that's really what is inspiring others to get involved. And like one of the things Lauren mentioned a while ago is that playground from the Families with Inclusion that have put together. That's a new organization, came together, community driven, and because there's the plan, there's the focus, people want it, and so they have different donors that are coming together, working with the city to all make that happen. So yes, I definitely, we are feeling that people are enthusiastic about it and they want to be a part. And like with Bayou Greenbelt, we've had companies chomping at the bit because they want to come out and physically volunteer. Like they want to bring equipment and make it happen. So I think people want to do all sorts of things to be able to be a part, and we're ready to do that.
Thank you for that, and thank you for being a part of the panel. For me, to that question a moment ago about one of the things that I thought was a lesson learned that I hope other cities will take away. I live in Baton Rouge and love to read the American press. And y'all are fortunate to have great local coverage in the media with the American press. But Baton Rouge can forget, and being in front of lawmakers in Baton Rouge is critical. And one of the things that I thought was so creative and important was the fact that the city and the foundation and many others put up resources so that the Advocate had dedicated coverage in Baton Rouge about Lake Charles and Southwest Louisiana all the time. I mean, it was like in the paper every week with some different story of Lake Charles and Southwest Louisiana's recovery. And that was really important, I think, just to keep it top of mind about the challenges, the opportunities, and the progress. And so I think that's another lesson hopefully many will take away and see as something that gets done in the future for other parts of the state and other parts of the country. Please help me in thanking Sarah and Josh and Lauren for making their time to do this today.